Have you ever heard of someone falling in love so deeply that it literally cost them everything?
And when I say everything, I really mean it. We're not just talking about their life savings or their reputation, we're talking about their entire family. Today, we're looking at the very real danger of digital obsession, and we're going to break down exactly how something that starts so small can completely destroy a life.
You know, the wildest part is that this isn't a story about some monster hiding in the dark. It's about a normal guy. He was living a completely normal life, right up until something online slowly, and I mean slowly, took control of his reality. By the time anyone actually realized what was happening, it was already way too late.
So let's talk about the illusion of connection. Like so many modern stories, this one starts with a screen. A simple connection, and a person on the other side who seemed to understand absolutely everything.
The subject here, Grant Amato, really wasn't what you'd expect. He came from a solid, stable family, a supportive home. He had structure, opportunities, exactly the kind of life most of us would consider incredibly secure. But somewhere along the line, something just shifted. He found a cam model online. Now, for most people, that's just entertainment, right? It's temporary, it's meaningless. But for Grant, it wasn't. For him, it felt entirely real. The conversations, the attention, this illusion of connection basically started replacing everything else in his actual life. And that's the terrifying thing about obsession. It doesn't just show up and announce itself as a threat. At first, it genuinely feels like purpose.
Which brings us to the next phase, slipping away from reality. Because what his family was seeing on the outside was completely different from what Grant was feeling on the inside.
They started noticing the money disappearing. We're talking thousands of dollars, just gone, vanished. And along with the money, they saw the isolation setting in, the total withdrawal. He was quite literally slipping away from reality, one bad decision at a time. This wasn't love anymore. It was something way deeper and way more dangerous. Naturally, his family stepped in. They tried to help him, you know? They set firm boundaries, cut off his access to the funds, and desperately tried to pull him back into the real world before he went over the edge. But here's the catch. When someone is completely trapped inside a reality they've built in their own head, help doesn't actually feel like help. To Grant, it felt like control. It felt like interference. In his mind, his family was the only thing standing between him and the life he truly believed he deserved.
This leads us to the intervention and the intense conflict that followed, because that is exactly where everything changed. What started out as genuine concern quickly morphed into constant conflict. The arguments were non-stop, and the tension in that house must have been absolutely suffocating. His family honestly believed they were saving him. But Grant? He thought they were destroying his world. The online connection, the imaginary life, the woman he thought loved him, to him, all of it was 100% real. So anyone trying to take that away basically became the enemy. Think about that for a second. How far do you think a person can go when they truly believe they have absolutely nothing left to lose? Because that's the exact moment logic just goes out the window, consequences stop mattering entirely, and that is exactly where this story crosses the line from a sad obsession into something totally irreversible.
The irreversible decision. One night, everything just broke. And the scariest part? It didn't happen with a massive warning or some moment of hesitation. It happened with a quiet, calculated decision. By morning, the very people who had spent their entire lives trying to protect him were just gone. The house that once felt so normal and full of life was now filled with something you can never undo, complete silence. But not a peaceful silence. It's that heavy, terrifying quiet that only comes after something precious has been taken and can never, ever be returned. So what happened next? We start uncovering the digital trail. When investigators finally stepped in, the full story didn't just hand itself over. It never does it? Initially, there was just massive confusion, so many questions and gaps in the story that made absolutely no sense. But the truth always finds a way to surface, piece by piece, detail by detail, until there's literally nowhere left to hide. When investigators mapped out the timeline, what they uncovered wasn't just a crime scene, it was a meticulous record of a mind unraveling. He drifted so far from reality that he simply couldn't find his way back. Over the course of just a few months, the progression is staggering, from a totally stable home in month 1 to finding that intense online connection in month 2, massive financial drain by month 3, the desperate family intervention in month 4, and ultimately the tragedy in month 5. The digital trail and financial records painted a picture that was honestly far more disturbing than anyone anticipated. This wasn't a sudden snap. This had been building for months.
And then came the part that shocked literally everyone involved. When confronted, there was no dramatic breakdown from Grant, no visible remorse, just a calm, highly controlled explanation. He talked as if what happened was just the unavoidable result of his circumstances. But let's be real here. Circumstances do not create actions like this. Choices do.
This case quickly became way more than just a shocking headline. It forced people to ask a really difficult question. How does someone go from being a regular part of a loving family to completely destroying it? Was it just obsession? Was it the crushing isolation? An addiction to a digital fantasy that somehow felt more real than actual life? Or was there something darker, simmering underneath the whole time?
Stories like this force us to look at something super uncomfortable. The reality that danger doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks entirely normal. Sometimes it looks like someone sitting quietly in their bedroom, just staring at a screen, building a whole life that simply doesn't exist. And by the time the real world tries to break that bubble, it's already too late.
When you really look at it, this wasn't about one single bad decision. It was a snowball effect. A series of tiny, awful choices, ignored warnings, missed signals, countless moments where things could have easily gone differently, but just didn't. And I think that's what makes this whole situation so deeply unsettling. It's not just the crime itself, but how easily the whole descent was misunderstood until the very bitter end.
Danger disguised as connection. Because really, the most terrifying part of this isn't how it ended, but how quietly everything changed before anyone even realized what was at stake.
So, the next time something in your life feels a little off, maybe a little too intense or too all-consuming, you have to ask yourself, is it real or is it just something that feels real, right up until it isn't? Sometimes the most dangerous things in the world don't come with glaring warning signs. They come disguised as connection. And by the time you see them for what they really are, they've already taken everything.